North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor?
A contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
Rock and roll has got to go.
And welcome back to the Hometown Holler. I'm Daniel Ayers.
And I'm Quinn Ray. Well, hey, man.
Have you ever had a Krispy Kreme?
Plenty. Look at me.
Was it crispy?
It was not, but they're not my favorite donut. You know, I'm a daily donut guy, but I like the chocolate covered with the custard filling, and I'm a donut guy.
Well, two things. First, of all, daily donuts, amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
Sam, have you ever had daily donuts?
I don't know what that is. What is it?
It is a nationally ranked donut shop here in Alamance County.
Mm-hmm.
They have their maple bacon donut. It is amazing
and crispy,
and crispy. Yeah. So that's the one thing. Plug for Daily Donuts. We're not sponsored. We don't have. We would love to, by the way.
Yeah.
Daily
I was
Donuts.
gonna say where are the donuts at?
Yeah.
Well, and it was awesome when we had Bell and Sylvester on. Bell came and brought us daily donuts.
That was
amazing. It was really cool.
Yeah, so future guests, if you really want to get in our good graces. No, I was just bringing it up because there's that meme of the lady who's like, have you ever had a Krispy Kreme? Was it crispy?
I don't.
Have you seen this meme?
I have not seen that.
What about Krispy Kreme the rapper? You remember that guy?
Oh, dude, Froggy Fresh. Because he got sued by Krispy Kreme.
Yes.
Froggy Fresh 2012, dude. I actually follow him on Facebook, and
he will do cameos and stuff.
Yeah. I've always wanted it, but just never been able to justify it. Get a Froggy Fresh cameo. Man, I didn't think that opening. I was wondering. So the meme came up, the Krispy Kreme meme came up, and I was like, I'm just going to say it because Quinn's going to ask me, hey, man, I'm just going to launch into it and see where it goes.
Daniel.
You're not? Well, all I'm saying is we've been doing this for like a year. I don't know. We've had like 40, maybe 50-some episodes, and everyone is hey, man, which is great. Man. It's become a thing.
Yeah.
It didn't start that way, but it became a thing. And sometimes, I say Benghazi. Sometimes I say Krispy Kreme. We'll see. But today on the pod, we have Winston-Salem native and entrepreneur extraordinaire, Sam Grote.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Really excited to have Sam on the podcast.
Finally get to meet him in person.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You've been in the ether for several months now. We're in a group chat, and I'll give you kind of a full introduction here in a second, Sam. But we're in a group chat, and every now and then, Sam will pop in saying something really insightful and interesting, and we're like, you know what?
Do I have a new intellectual crush?
Yeah, maybe. Who's to say? And so we do what you always do when you have an intellectual crush, which is invite him on the pod.
That's right.
So, folks, Sam Grote is a Winston-Salem native, built a life in his hometown with his wife and 3 young kids, and a 4th on the way. How much longer? Sam?
3 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got you at the perfect time. Perfect time. UNC
Not
Chapel.
according to my wife. But.
Right. Sure. Absolutely. Right. We'll try and get you out of here.
I'm going to pay for this podcast hard.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, brother.
See, I'm like the one guy who's like not married and has no kids. So I'm just kind of laughing nervously as I look into my future, staring down.
It's
that
great.
barrel.
It's great.
It is.
Yeah. So you're UNC Chapel Hill graduate with degrees in math and economics. And you initially planned, my understanding, to pursue a PhD, but ended up in the investment world. So
that's right. Yeah.
Pivoted away from academia into
done a lot of pivots.
Yeah, lot. I was reading your biography, and I was like, yeah, like your pivot is your middle name.
Oh yeah.
You after starting at a major investment firm, you co-founded a hedge fund. I think you're the only person I know who's has
for
done,
sure.
Yeah, has done anything like that.
There's not a lot of those in North Carolina.
No, we don't have many. You grew it ultimately to $350 million in assets by investing in companies like Amazon, SpaceX, Instacart. You, like I said, came back home, start the family. You launched a software company as well, Centerpiece. Name of the company, founded the NC Business Impact Forum, and I think you're now preparing to launch another venture. It sounds like
I'm
you've
incubating another one. Yeah,
yeah. I feel like
3 companies, 4 kids, 6 chickens. We got a lot going on.
You're it's almost like a company per kid.
Yeah,
that's great. That's the way to do it. So Sam's on the holler today to discuss how his experience in entrepreneurship influences his views on policy, why he decided to launch the North Carolina Business Impact Forum.
Yeah, really excited about that.
The forum's approach, dude. I'm stoked, and hopefully, we'll talk about dive into some current economic events, the impact of Doge, for example, in North Carolina. We got a chance to talk about that. But really, this episode is going to be a lot about innovation, disruption, entrepreneurship, and North Carolina. Yeah. So this is going to be fun. This is kind of different than anything we've done on the pod, honestly.
It is. Thanks for coming to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's my first podcast, so I'm excited to be here.
Nice.
Well, let's kick things off by talking a little bit about you and your views, your approach to capitalism, entrepreneurship, and your views on policy, and maybe that'll give us kind of a good segue, a good bridge into talking about the Business Forum.
Yeah, so we were just talking about this a couple of minutes ago, right? I think I see really two competing views, for capitalism today, and I think it absolutely impacts how you think about policy. And the first is capitalism is all about maximizing competition between companies, competition between individuals.
That's what I was taught in school.
Yeah, that's the fuel. That's the fuel. That's
right.
how you ultimately maximize innovation. That's how you grow the size of the pie. And that benefits all of us in a very connected society that we live in. And then all of your policies should be focused on just that. How do we make it so that every kid, regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of the zip code they live in, can compete in a modern, high-tech economy. The other competing view that we see a lot is how do we make it easier for those that have capital to just get more of it? And the way that you do that is by actually minimizing competition, making so that it's easier for them to take the capital they have and avoid competition and just get richer and richer and richer.
I don't like that.
I don't like that either. No. And obviously that impacts your policy views.
Yeah.
And in many ways, probably one of the biggest complaints I have is far too often people don't really frame it that way. They talk about it almost as if we should be doing this policy because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's the smart way. The smart ones do it.
Or moral terms. I see that a lot.
Yeah. In many ways, if you don't do this, then you're not as good of a person as I am. If you don't invest in kids' healthcare, if you don't make it so that they can go to school with food in their belly, if you're not investing in their public schools, you're not as person. Yeah. And that might work if you're talking to your buddy.
It's also really off-putting for most people, I think.
I would say for anyone that you don't know.
Yeah.
If you know that person and they know you and they trust that you care about them and you're talking about them and it's a private conversation, they trust that you know who they are and know their character, and it doesn't come across as a lecture, as judgmental.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be part of a impersonal mass communication campaign, that's when you start to see people shut down, go on the offensive, and it's totally unnecessary. There's a way in which you can frame it to say, this is going to actually benefit all of us because we live in a connected society. We benefit when everyone around us is more productive, more innovative, less reliant on government services, spending more money on all of the stuff that we're producing. Their spending is our income, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I think about, I've been obviously in the private sector my entire life until the Business Impact Forum is really my first nonprofit venture that I've embarked on.
Sure.
So I've always had a major appreciation for capitalism, for technology. It's just, we've made it almost like a trade-off. You're either pro-business or you're pro-people. And I think that's wrong.
Yeah, it does seem like it could be and should be a both and. I feel like this would be a particularly challenging time to be anyone, but especially a North Carolinian who is a big believer in the possibility of technology and innovation. And North Carolina, like, tech is huge here, right? We are, I think, of all the states in the South, tech looms the largest in terms of our economic landscape. Yeah. But it's a challenging time because I think, like, personally speaking, 6 years ago, you'd ask me like my thoughts on technology.
Andrew Yang.
I was waiting. When are we going to talk about Andrew Yang? Well, actually, okay. So let's table the Andrew Yang thing for just a moment.
Well, no, I was just thinking about you thinking 6 years ago.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was thinking a lot about Andrew Yang 6 years ago, but I was also like, I would have said that, I would have had some like positive things to say about people like Elon Musk. I would have had I would have had positive. I would have had some criticisms, but like I would have had a more, I would say, an optimistic view of tech and that industry and the key figures in it. And so now I feel like it's. I
have a lot of views on. I mean, I've been in the tech. Yeah, it's. So I'm a personal investor in SpaceX. I've been investing in SpaceX for.
And what they did was just amazing.
About a decade. Yeah,
catching the launch like.
Well,
amazing.
There was a moment when Elon Musk had had like Tony Stark vibes.
Yeah,
just like this is a guy who is truly driven by some kind of innate need to innovate. Yeah. Well, that's where we are now.
Well, I mean, that's Tony Stark too. I like Iron Man.
That's
Tony
true.
Stark can get punched in the face.
But this kind of like his ideas were so big, his ambitions were so big. No ideas seemed too big. Yeah. Dude was talking about colonizing Mars, and he was doing it from the standpoint of like, I don't care if my competitors have my tech because we'll do it better anyway. Like he
was pouring all of his own personal capital into it as well. I mean,
he was sleeping on the floor of the factory. Like he just made it look like being an innovator was exciting. It was an adventure, and now it's not the same.
Yeah, it's. I'm incredibly disappointed in part because I think the opportunity cost is just so high.
Tremendous.
The impact that he could have from a tech standpoint. I want him spending time on SpaceX.
Right.
I want him spending time on Tesla. I don't want him spending time tweeting falsehoods about Social Security.
Right.
So that's incredibly concerning. I do think that, I'm a big believer in the power of technology startups, obviously. It's never been easier to build great technology than it is today. And it's getting exponentially easier every day. And that's because of cloud computing. It's because of AI. It's because of a laundry list of reasons. And so now, today you can take a team of 5 people and they can solve massive problems at scale using technology in a way that just was not possible 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so when you think about all the problems that we face in society, technology is going to play a major role. And so all policymakers need to be fostering an environment that encourages and supports technological innovation. And we can't necessarily allow, the frustrations we might have with some of the visible tech leaders who are engaging in some problematic behavior necessarily cause us to adopt an anti-tech, anti-innovation brand. You can criticize Elon and because I see like when I see a Democratic policymaker complain about SpaceX, that's when I'm kind of like, it's one of the most innovative companies ever.
Right.
You can say that and also be critical of the things he's doing outside of SpaceX. 2 things can be true, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's a good moral just across the board, right? Which I feel like our realm of politics has turned into, if you are on the blue side, anything on the red side is absolutely terrible with what they're doing, and vice versa, right? So I definitely agree with what you're saying here, because SpaceX is doing some amazing shit.
Yeah.
Elon Musk can go lick another boot.
They're actually saving the government money too. When you see people talk about the money they've received from federal government contracts, if that money was instead spent on another provider, it would have been way more expensive.
Man, we might have some listeners tune out.
Yeah.
But I like the truth.
Yeah. But I say the biggest complaint that I make to other leaders in the technology space is, actually, if I rewind back to when we first invested in SpaceX, I put in our investment memo as one of the main risk was this fanboy attitude towards Elon Musk.
The cult of personality.
Yeah. And I think the line I had was, everybody wants to go to his birthday party. So are they going to hold him accountable? And what does that mean from a corporate governance standpoint? And you fast forward to today, and that is more relevant than ever. Tech leaders are terrified to hold him accountable publicly on anything. And so as a result, he's just kind of gone off the deep end a little bit. And I look at this and say, hey, if you want him to be innovative, you need to hold him accountable on all the problematic behavior. So he is spending his time and his energy on innovative things.
I think that ship has sailed. I really do. Now he's the richest man in the world. He gets to control cabinet meetings. I just don't know how you reel that back in.
Well,
he has a Playboy patrol. He knows what he's doing.
I think you raise a really interesting and fair point, which challenges us to hold 2 competing ideas in our minds at the same time. One of which is that Elon Musk has built incredibly innovative and valuable companies.
Yep.
I think that is indisputable. Like I would,
Yeah.
as a serious Elon Musk critic,
Yes.
I totally believe that to be true. But at the same time, he has done a tremendous amount of damage to the credibility of technology and innovation. And there's, and I don't even think we've begun to scratch the surface of where that will lead us as a society.
And I think a lot of what a lot of technologists don't understand, and part of it is because the technology world kind of lives in a bubble within a bubble.
Right.
It's very concentrated in certain places. Silicon Valley, New York City. Centerpiece Software is the only software company in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
when I saw your bio and that you were born and raised in Winston-Salem and came back to do tech, I was like, huh.
Yeah, I didn't come back to do tech.
Software
Yeah.
and tobacco. Like what was the wins? But yeah, okay.
I didn't come back to do tech. I came back just because that's where we had our first kid. He was one at the time. We were ready to, Charlotte's a big, loud, expensive city. And our family was in Winston, so we wanted to come back. But, and obviously with the ability to work remotely, that has made it a lot easier. So I can hire and recruit people anywhere.
Right.
I have people in Chicago. I have had people in Las Vegas. I've had people, contractors in Europe, building tech for me. And so that's made it a lot easier. But, going back to the point of, I think a lot of people in the tech industry don't realize how much Elon, and not just Elon, people like David Sachs. I don't know if you know him. Sure. Peter Thiel, how much they're damaging the tech brand and the venture capital brand across mainstream America,
right,
and how bad that is for that industry. And that's where I think we have to kind of try to remember that it's almost like a special interest group scenario where there's actually a lot of tech people that are not happy about this. They're just not loud about it.
Right. Because it did go for me from like Tony Stark to Bond villain.
Yeah.
In terms of just public perception and all that. So I got a couple follow-up questions on this. One of them is, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, to kind of tie this in with politics and ideally state politics. How does partisan politics, Democrat, Republican Party, what issues do you see in the partisan approach to technological issues, whether it's regulation of social media or subsidies for tech companies? I don't whatever thoughts you have on any of these issues. And then my second question would be, what do you think technologists, entrepreneurs, investors, what issues should they be focusing on right now?
Man, that's a big question.
That's a loaded question.
And your 90-second starts. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tough question to answer. I think
Actually, let me make it simpler. Yeah. What problems are being talked about, and which problems should be talked about?
Yeah. That's a really hard question. Well, I mean, I think part of it is, as a technologist, you really want to think about the problems that you're closest to. I think it's very dangerous for a technologist to kind of try to find a problem that they know very little about and build a solution for it. So typically, I think a really good approach is finding people that are in industries that have problems, and going down as a technologist and interviewing them and spending time talking. That's what's interesting about a state like North Carolina. You have so many old school businesses and industries that need assistance, that if you could, from a policy making standpoint, find a way to kind of connect the technologist in your state and some of these industries that are having a challenge innovating, and get them in a room together and just talk and listen and learn, there's a lot that you could accomplish. And there's a concept in the tech world called an incubator, basically. And it's just, that's what you do. You sit down and you just spend a ton of time learning about a problem, talking to the people who are experiencing that problem every day, and just ideating on solutions, throwing out what doesn't work, doubling down on what does until you come up with a solution that makes sense. And then once you have a solution that makes sense, that's 90% of the battle. Building it is actually very easy. And so when I think about technological innovation in North Carolina, it's not rocket science. We have to be willing to listen to the people who are experiencing the problem every single day. That's when technology works. It's when you're building tech in a room by yourself and not talking to the people experiencing the problem that you make a lot of mistakes. And I think you could probably abstract that to policy more broadly. I mean, if you think about issues in public schools, I think a lot of the problem is
public education. That's totally where I was thinking in my mind. Like, I see there being a huge need for people to come together in a room and have big idea conversations about public education.
Yeah, and it's one of my biggest complaints I have with kind of many people in the tech and the VC world is because that's how they actually model their businesses. So when if a venture capitalist is talking to a technology entrepreneur and that technology entrepreneur goes to them and says, I don't have any experience with this problem. I don't know anyone who's experienced the problem. I'm not talking to people experiencing the problem, but here's my solution. That venture capitalist would sprint out of the room. They want to give them a penny. But then you see the same venture capitalists and tech people pontificating about policy, and they're doing that exact same thing. They're not bringing in public school teachers and counselors to talk about the problems that we're dealing with in education. They're not talking to the actual on-the-ground subject matter experts. And so they're kind of doing the exact opposite of their entire business model that actually made them wealthy in the first place, And there's a reason for that. It's incentives. They have a clear incentive to do it when they're investing in other companies because that's how they make money. But in the realm of public policy, what's their incentive? Lower their taxes.
That's right. That's right. So we've been saying technology and technological advances and stuff. And I think it's important for me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's listening to this conversation. And can you give us an example of it? So when I think of like technological advances, just for the layman's terms, we have AI right now. Like everybody uses ChatGPT. It makes it easier for me to write an email. Or, you said now with technology, we can take where somebody had 100 programmers doing stuff. We could use 5 now to do it. And so that's saying to me that we're going to be losing jobs. I have self-checkout. Technology has got to this. What are some examples of how being a tech person can go and help businesses or a mom and pop business?
Instead of on this massive corporate
Instead
scale.
of this massive scale of just being out, like, we're going to lay off all of our workers now because now we have this machine that does everything that you guys do.
Yeah.
And I bet this ties probably into the business impact forum in some way. I mean, I don't know. I'm just taking a leap of logic there, but I would imagine that connecting with, because we have a lot of small business owners in this state, and helping them appreciate and implement advances in technology is really important.
Well, I don't know what an advance in technology is, like going into public schools. So an example of that, what I'm just thinking is ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean, I think, when I think about technological innovation, it's how do we empower somebody to make their life easier to accomplish whatever the task is they're trying to accomplish. And so that applies to anything. So it could be, a teacher in a classroom better connecting with their students and being able to better communicate with parents and their families in real time about what's working, what's not working. Things like Classroom Dojo, which is a software solution that a lot of educators across the country are using.
We use it.
Yeah. And so I think it's, again, it has the ability to not just benefit large companies looking to enhance their bottom line. It can help individuals. It can help people in the private sector, the public sector, really across the board. But I think the key, again, it comes down to actually listening to those folks to begin with. So from a policy standpoint, if you're talking about issues in public schools and you're talking about technological innovation in public schools, the starting point has to be sitting down with those teachers, sitting down with those counselors, sitting down with those parents, those families, and listening to them. If you're trying to build tech, again, from a distant place, you're not going to solve their problems. You're going to build a solution to the wrong problem, and no one's going to get any value out of it. So I think that's one response I would have. I think the other issue, and this is part of the reason why I think people have an issue with tech, is there are costs to innovation. And you talked about lost jobs.
Change, right?
It's creative destruction.
Yeah.
It's creative
The
destruction.
cost isn't just monetary.
Yeah, it's a small businesses. I mean, think about Amazon. Amazon, incredibly innovative company. They solved a major problem. People need to be able to efficiently find and buy products at the lowest possible price and without having to travel to get it. They want it at their doorstep within 24 hours. And they solved that.
Books.
Yeah, and they've solved that problem, better than any other company ever. But there were costs to that, unintended consequences. It wasn't maybe part of their goal, but at the end of the day, a lot of small businesses were shut down. And that has a significant impact on some of those local economies. It was a jobs engine for a lot of these places. And people look at that and they see wealthy Jeff Bezos.
Right.
And it's natural for them to start to think of tech as bad, as Amazon as bad. And I think my response to that would be, that's where the government needs to come in and manage the unintended consequences of innovation. I don't think we want to slow down innovation. We want to hold our elected representatives accountable to say, what are you going to do to make sure that people that lost their jobs because of this really positive thing are going to be in a position where they can get the skills they need to get new jobs in the 21st century, or at least a safety net where in some cases, if you're mid to late 50s, you're not going to be able to become a software developer, you know? And so how do you at least create a safety net, a system where you minimize those costs and put people that are on the wrong side of innovation in a position where they can still continue to have a high quality of life. And if they're not doing that, that's the policymaker that should be held accountable, not necessarily an Amazon or a technology company like that. Now, I will say, because I imagine there's some people who are listening to this who really do not like Amazon. Amazon has engaged in anti-competitive practices. So this gets back to the beginning conversation around the goal should be maximizing competition. And there are times where Amazon didn't just outcompete, they intentionally made it impossible for small businesses to compete with them. And we should have a policy framework that makes that not possible.
Or even given, incentives. Like I think AOC, she voted no to give up in New York to have Amazon go up there, and they were going to get a shit ton of tax incentives to go up there. And it's just like, well, no, just pay. Like they, I would, if we're talking policy, I think it's the fear of going back to what you said with people not liking Amazon and technology because it's just so large and so wealthy and so oligarchy type feeling. It's like, well, I want to start a restaurant and I need help starting my small business with good policies to help me do that. Or I can reach out to a Sam who can help me solve problems at this level, where it just seems right now that all the policy is meant for just the wealthy business owners.
Right. And then the question becomes, did they actually need those tax incentives in order to actually do that in the first place? Or was that just them flexing their muscles to get a little bit more profit?
Yes.
And I think that's a really, really hard problem to solve because you want the government should be facilitating private investment where it's not economical in some situations, but the government has to be thoughtful about, is it actually not economical? You need to be, and I think North Carolina actually does a pretty good job of this. I mean, Governor Stein just announced, I want to say last week, probably 1,500 jobs that were created in exclusively in rural North Carolina counties, all of which were partially funded by the 1NC program, which provides government grants to private companies who are looking to make private investments and create jobs specifically in rural counties. And where those jobs are going to, the wage of those jobs are going to be above the average wage in those counties. And it's all conditioned on them actually doing it.
Sure.
If they back out 6 months into it, you don't get the grant. And so I think we should be promoting, and we'll talk about this maybe later on, but the forum definitely wants to prioritize, that's the shorthand name for the NC Business Impact Forum, companies with a real local presence. Now that could be local businesses exclusively, or it could be a bigger conglomerate, but that has a 40-year presence in the region, has shown a commitment to North Carolina, where we have a lot of confidence that those incentives that we're providing are actually going to be fully utilized. And not somebody coming in and they're looking at North Carolina, they're looking at Georgia, they're looking at New York, and they're just trying to flex their muscles to get as much money as possible. Because then I take a look at it and say, I don't know how much I trust the staying power.
Right. That makes sense.
We want it to pay dividends for decades and not just for 3 years.
Yeah, so I think this actually is a great segue to talk more about the forum. I'd be curious to know, I mean, you're a busy guy. You have a lot of projects. What was the light bulb that went off that made you think, this is what I need to spend my time and treasure and talent doing?
Well, what is the forum?
Yeah. So the forum we are a nonprofit research and advocacy group that exclusively addresses issues and policies that impact North Carolina businesses. That's it. That's the mission. We don't stray from at all. And so, like I said, it's the first nonprofit venture that I've been involved in. I think what really made me want to do it, I mean, the starting point is, what's the purpose of policy? It's to create better lives for people.
Yep.
Like, at a high level, that's what we're trying to do. And I genuinely believe that the most direct way to do that is to create stronger businesses.
Yeah.
More jobs, better jobs. I mean, we spend 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year.
So much of our lives.
It's depressing to say out loud, right? 40 years. Not everyone gets to do fun podcasts. Right?
And it shouldn't necessarily have to be depressing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
You want jobs that give you full leverage out of your capabilities, that are
Right.
fun, that are safe, and that obviously generate an income for you that allow you to have a high quality life, that
Right.
you can put a roof over your head. You don't have to worry about where your next meal's coming from. You can support your family. You can go on, vacations to
not
Busch
just get
Gardens
by.
and Dollywood, like we were talking about. And if you're a policymaker and that's not something you're talking about all of the time, what are you doing? That's
Trying to get people not to vote.
yeah. Yeah. And so I think part of it was recognizing that I just don't think that people are talking enough about, and we talked about this earlier, a lot of times it's we act like it's a trade-off. If you're pro-business, you're not pro-people.
right.
And I don't think that's true at all.
The conversation is skewed.
It's skewed.
And it also, there is so much emphasis on areas of disagreement in areas where people, I mean, you mentioned this in some of the notes you shared prior to the show. Like there's so much overlap on North Carolina has one of the best community college systems in the nation, and that is a bipartisan project. Right, and there are other examples of that we could talk about, but instead we're wrapped up in personality contests. And being fixated on differences of opinion.
Yeah,
Well, and-
Bill's about putting the American flag in the classroom.
Right,
we spend
right.
80% of our time talking about
we
that.
We just did an episode the other week about bills that are going through the General Assembly.
Yeah.
And it was astonishing to me how many people were just dedicating. I mean, going to Raleigh takes work. It is expensive. It does not pay well. It is not fun for most people. And the amount of people who seem to be going to Raleigh at great expense to themselves personally to solve what I would call bullshit problems.
Did you see the one about from the Forsyth County representative?
No.
About the Moravian cookie?
Oh yes, yes.
Oh yeah, being the state cookie.
We now
state cookie.
have a state cookie
And a state star.
and a state star.
Yep.
And
Better lives all around.
Well, That's
right.
We have not
That's
addressed that yet at the forum. We'll get to that. It's on our to-do list.
And so that was something, and we did this issue, and actually we talked about the Moravian bill, and we ended up talking about a handgun bill where you can carry a gun into the General Assembly if you're on official business and blah blah blah. But it was just like these are the problems we're solving. It's such a distraction.
Such a distraction.
Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's a shared goal. Like there's nobody on the other side that's out there, oh, I want less jobs and I want worse jobs and I want worse paying jobs. It's a shared goal, and we actually agree from an approach standpoint on a lot of things. It's not just community colleges. It's job training programs more broadly. It's childcare.
Right.
Like childcare is actually fairly bipartisan in North Carolina. It's all the grants I was talking about. That's very bipartisan work.
Right.
And we all, when I say we, I mean not just policymakers, citizens. In my view, we need to be spending a heck of a lot more time talking about the things that bind us together. And trying to restore some trust amongst citizens, because that's what keeps me up at night as a dad with 3 soon to be 4 kids, is not just that citizens have lost faith in government, but they've lost faith in each other, and that's not sustainable, which isn't good for anyone. And so we have to talk about, and I look at business and economic policy as it's a great way to impact people's lives, and it's a great way to bring people together so that we're actually able to address the more contentious issues, the stuff where we do diverge from a value standpoint and from an approach standpoint, but it can be more productive because we actually have something that's binding us together, and we're highlighting these bipartisan. We don't highlight them in North Carolina at all. I mean, have y'all heard of the My Future NC initiative?
No.
Give it to us.
The first time I heard about it. So 2019, 99% of Republicans and Democrats in the NC General Assembly came together. 99 point, it was like 1 or 2. I'm curious about the 1 or 2 who did not vote. But 99% of them came together and put together an initiative basically putting out a mission statement that we were going to make North Carolina go from having 1.4 million skilled workers to 2 million by 2030. And we're going to do it by bringing the business community together, the academic community together, the policymaking community together. And we're going to focus on childcare, community colleges, better retention capabilities at universities. 99% of Republicans and Democrats got together, and they just released a progress update, and they originally were expected to fall short of that 2 million target by a few 100,000. Now it's like 40,000.
Wow.
And I talked about
Sure.
it. I put it on our social media. I didn't see anyone else talking about
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this.
Never
until
heard of
now. And honestly, I'm somebody who tries to follow stuff like this and like looks for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I stumbled across it. And to me, and you start paying attention to a lot of these bills. I mean, there was one just yesterday around taxing credits or tax credits for the development of affordable homes in lower income communities that had Republican and Democratic sponsors.
Right.
Nobody talks about it. Instead, we're talking about Moravian cookies and American flags in classrooms and guns being brought into the General Assembly. And it's all this silly stuff that I get why the politicians do it because that's how they raise money, in the short term, but it's short-sighted.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you take a longer view, right? If we have, as a state, as a nation, but we'll say state because this is a North Carolina politics podcast.
Yeah.
If we have a business landscape that is not competitive, that is not driven by innovation, and we have these really calcified businesses, I mean, essentially a corporate good old boys club, right? That's not conducive to. Well, one, it's not conducive to people feeling good about their lives and feeling empowered and feeling I'm excited to go to work tomorrow. I'm excited to engage in my community. It's really bad for our democracy as well, right? I mean, I think a lot of the problems we have today are people who feel disempowered, who feel like the system doesn't work. It's people who have a lot hoarding more, and there's not a way for people with good ideas to break through. And so, what you're saying about the impetus behind the Business Impact Forum. This clicks for me. This makes a lot of sense, and there's a real need for this, not just in North Carolina, but in every state. What I'm curious to hear about, because there are other business organizations or
There's a lot.
There's a lot,
Yeah.
and I'd love to hear more about your approach.
Yeah.
What you guys are doing that kind of distinguishes you from. I don't want to say your competitors, but maybe your competitors, but just other folks out there who are operating in the same spaces.
Well, I would start with the name. The name was very intentional. If you look at the names of a lot of these other business organizations, it's essentially just the business community they represent. The
Builders Association.
Yeah, Association of
Cattlemen's
this.
Association.
Yeah. Or these are the businesses that we represent. And I think the problem with that approach, and you kind of talked about the Good Old Boys Club a little bit, right? It's sometimes the owners of those businesses, their focus is not on what's actually best for even their own business or their industry that they're participating in. It's more of an outlet for them to express their political views.
Man, it's so when we interviewed Sarah Tabor last year and she came on the podcast, she was running for Commissioner of Agriculture, and she talked about you go across the state and you talk to so many different groups, and going into spaces to talk with folks who are, again, the sweet potato growers association or the cattlemen. I mean, all these groups, right? Like from every industry have their own organization, and there are many people in those organizations who are driven by innovation and want competition because that is going to challenge everybody. It's going to be better for everybody that way. But she told us about how there are also folks who have really influential voices in these circles, and their goal isn't innovation. It's simply to protect what they have here and now.
I have a great example of that, and this is actually relates to Centerpiece Software, the tech company I founded a few years ago, and the trade association in that industry. This was a few years back. They put out a publication, and one of the big CEOs of the big companies in the industry took half the publication to complain about a regulation to get rid of non-competes. And again, talking about competition.
Right.
That is anti-competitive behavior. You're basically saying we want to hold our workforce hostage. We don't want to have to compete for talents. We want to make new business formation harder, not easier. It is the most uncapitalistic idea ever. but it was good for that particular person's business because they weren't running a great business.
Yeah. Well,
And-
this is like the Lisa Barnes thing we talked about.
And it's not beneficial for that industry either, but that person's motivation wasn't that. So we put impact in the name because I didn't want any of that mission creep. Our goal was not to just represent business owners. It's to make sure that we're focused on things that actually positively impact businesses. And we're not going to stray from that. And I think that's companies in general really need to think about what is their mission, and it needs to be embedded in their name, in their brand, in their messaging from the beginning. So you go through our website and we just plaster it everywhere.
Right.
And that's very intentional.
How are you going to? So you are a nonpartisan group, because you're a nonprofit. But it feels to me when we were talking about it, Daniel mentioned that the Good Old Boys Club or putting American flags in the classroom. It kind of is when we talk about business people in the politicized world we live in now. It feels like the American flag to me, where when you're driving down the road here in Alamance County and you see somebody that's has the American flag in front of their house, you're like, they're a Republican, they're conservative. And the same kind of goes with like a businessman, right? When you go to, the Rotary Club or the local chamber or anybody that has a business, it's just like, that's just a conservative group. That is just the Republican group. And it feels like people on the left just don't want to be a part of that or feel like they can't break through into that. So how do we get people that are on the left to want to come together? Because obviously it's happening on the policymaker side, but we need more than just the policymakers, right? We need the buy-in of the public, and we need buy-ins of business owners. Here in Alamance, for instance, when elections are happening, you will have restaurants and business owners that will support one party, and then we're like, well, where's the other side? Where's the other businesses that support a party? And so I think it's really hard for public buy-in to get like, why am I going to support businesses when it feels like it's just a group of white guys that are conservative that are running the businesses?
Yeah. I think it's kind of a lot of what we've already discussed in terms of we have to stop making it a trade-off between doing what's right and doing what's best for business. I think those are the same things.
Yeah,
and
for sure. But how do we get people to think that way?
Well,
Yeah.
I think, and you're the expert here, Sam, but my intuition is that this is fundamentally a public education campaign to let people know, this is the data, this is and I've discovered this with the podcast. People are in many ways way more intelligent than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
People have not, and especially on a state and local level, we have a really horrible information ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so when you feed people good information, they respond to it accordingly. And people know good ideas when they see them.
Yeah.
But a lot of the ideas we're discussing here in this conversation, I'm sure a lot of the work you guys do at the forum, it hasn't reached most people.
Yeah.
And when I'm sure when they do,
Well, that's the first part of our kind of hero text on the website is elevate debate. That's kind of step one. We have to reach more people with data-driven, clearly communicated ideas.
and not just buzzwords.
And not just buzzwords. And we have to have you have to present both sides of an argument too.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. So if you look at our policy spotlights, we always talk about, here's what supporters say. Here's what supporters of the policy say. Here's what detractors say. Here's our take. Here's how we came to that conclusion. Very data driven. If you can't show me the data, I'm really not interested. In 2025, there's just too much data for it not to be available to justify your position. And then we also admit that we're kind of just we're making our best effort here. There's no facts in policy. We can't say that this policy definitely led to this outcome. No one can say that. And anyone that tries to say it, they're lying through their teeth.
Well, some policies, though, right?
Public policies, it depends on, like what? What's an example?
And we can look at the public policies on national level with the civil rights amendments that got put in, or women's suffrage policies.
Human right. Yeah, I would say I'm talking
more
economic.
Yeah,
okay.
commercial.
Like this stimulus package is responsible for.
Well, I think this comes back to because I was briefly an econ major, and I still really like economics, but it's a fuzzy discipline in terms of it's science. It's not not a physical science. It's a strange I mean, because so much of it is data and statistics, and like depending on how you look at anything, it can say anything you want.
Whatever assumptions you have embedded in your model, whatever methodology. Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, even just yesterday in North Carolina, I think it was the director of Medicaid of the Department of Health and Human Services put out a study on a pilot program that was evaluating kind of a pilot project for Medicaid enrollees in North Carolina that were focused on providing them with healthy food. It was kind of non-medical services. What happens if we provide them
Kind of
healthy
preventative
food?
yeah.
Preventative stuff. What is the impact on Medicaid spending over time? And the results looked very, very good. It showed a pretty significant reduction in Medicaid spending. At Forum, we like to look through the details.
Right.
And so we wanted
like
to
you
understand
to,
the
too.
methodology. Did you control for all the relevant variables? It was the test groups were in certain counties and the control groups were in other counties. So the question becomes, could those county level differences lead to socioeconomic differences that cause a greater consumption of those services? And so that's, again, I couldn't really ascribe a ton of value to the results of that study. I couldn't say that, we should be doing more of this because it generates a positive ROI, return on investment.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. It just means we need to work harder to actually go out and create that data. So we're very data driven, but we're not blinded by data. Data can be wrong.
Yeah.
It can measure the wrong thing. You have to kind of combine data with those conversations with the on the ground subject matter experts. Because if those aren't seeing eye to eye, then you're probably not looking at constructing the data set the right way. And so I think that's a big part of it. We just have to elevate debate. We have to be intellectually more honest. We have to present both sides. We have to show the data. It has to be founded in logical reasoning. And we got to communicate it in a way that different audiences can understand. And we just have to keep doing it. I don't think we've put our best foot forward. I think that's my big thing.
I think that's a great point.
With it.
I think I think it's a fantastic approach. And I think the how that you just described, I really like how it's coupled with what I think is a very savvy why. Because one of my criticisms of just left of center PR in general, and we talked about this at the beginning, is like framing things in moral terms. Like we got to fight climate change because the polar bears. Right. We got to save the planet. Blah blah blah. Where it's like, I wonder what would happen if on that front, like we said, let's assume climate change is a hoax. Don't we want to be energy independent for national security? Like if we framed it in terms of like, this is just the right thing to do so that we all live in a better, stronger society. Not the right thing to do in terms of I'm a better person and I'll get into heaven or be reincarnated as, a snow leopard or whatever.
You don't want Russia geopolitical decisions to impact the price of energy.
Exactly. Exactly. And I just think pitching it to people in that way is it's not condescending. It doesn't come from this place of sanctimony. It just comes from a like, look, you want what I want, right? We are both after the same goal, and this is how we get there.
And if you want to talk about a topical example in North Carolina, Medicaid right now is really really big. And you saw a lot of different people talking about
a lot of morality conversation.
And I totally get it. And I think when you're in a room with people who trust you, you can have those conversations.
It's the audience.
Yeah, when you're talking to somebody who doesn't know you as part of a mass communication campaign, and it's the median citizen who is already, living close to paycheck, and they're going to sit there and say, there are problems everywhere. We can't solve every problem, so stop asking for more of my money to solve every single problem. And I don't think it's necessary, because you can connect Medicaid expansion in a way that show how it benefits every single person across the state of North Carolina. It's harder than the morality argument, but it's kind of your job as a policymaker and as a politician. And if you can't do it, then you haven't earned my vote. And so, when we think about Medicaid and we talk about nursing facilities for the elderly, what are the options there? If the government is not going to provide nursing homes for low-income elderly populations,
especially
in rural places, the burden is on their families, who are also likely to be low income. And what is the impact on those families? Are they going to be able to work more or less? Less. Right? Are they going to have to consume more government services as a result of this, or less?
Probably more.
Are they going to have more or less disposable income to spend on local businesses? Less. On top of that,
You're making way too much sense.
right?
Yeah,
This is way
Why are we
too-
not making that? And then if you think about all the mission critical services, so maternal care, yeah, we absolutely cannot allow a single expecting mother to not have the maternal care that they need. The question becomes who pays for it.
Yep.
Is it hospitals or is it the government? If it's hospitals, what happens to those hospitals? They become less profitable. When they're less profitable, they shut down services or they close down entirely. You see that in rural America
Yeah,
everywhere.
we've seen that a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially in our eastern and westernmost parts of the state.
It's been, I think 15 have closed down
Wow.
in the last 5 to 7 years. And that's just, most of them have had their OB services closed down. Their cancer services come down. In Winston-Salem, probably if you go out 4 or 5 county radius, they're all traveling to Winston-Salem,
right.
to Wake Baptist and to Devant to get those services.
My brother was a nursing student in Boone, and dude was commuting to Winston-Salem
Yeah.
for his clinicals. I mean, that's,
And that impacts the
that's
people
what-
in Winston-Salem too. Now you have a more crowded healthcare system that increases your wait times and increases your costs and lowers the quality of that care. And those rural hospitals are job engines. So you take away those jobs, and those are high-paying jobs. That impacts every other local business around them that depends on the income for those people receive, who end up becoming the consumers of their businesses. So there's a way to, in a connected society, you can always make these connections.
Sure.
You just have to work a little harder. And then I get back to well, why are we not doing this? Because there's a lot of policymakers and politicians who I know are smart enough to do it. Then I wonder, do you care? Like, what is your objective? Do you just want to feel like you're better than the other side? Or do you
Yeah.
want to solve problems for the people you claim to care
Well,
about?
this comes down to a thing that
Well, I
one
think
of
it's hard.
I think it's. I mean, hard things are hard, right? I mean, that was like the David Axelrod, like just hard problems are hard to solve,
Well, I
right?
mean, it
And-
kind of goes back to what you guys were talking about in our chat earlier, kind of just with
Yeah.
like some messaging. Like, how do we turn everything you said? Because you connected the dots for me.
But distill it.
Yeah, to be like, pro-life.
Yeah.
Like how do you do that?
But I think your starting point, I think, is the key, which is to assume that the other person you're talking to ultimately is after the same goal and doesn't need a lecture.
That's right.
Doesn't need to be told what they're doing wrong or how they're in the wrong if X, Y, if they don't agree with X, Y, Z. But just like, let's assume that we are after a more prosperous North Carolina where people are less reliant on government services, where people have greater access to opportunities. And if they have good ideas, those ideas can compete.
Yeah.
If we assume that you and I are both after that goal, that to me, like, that opens the door.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Starting with agreements.
Yeah, and to your point about politicians and just like, it is tough for me to figure out who actually wants to solve big problems. Like when it comes to public education, I think there are a number of GOP, for example, elected officials who really do believe that private school vouchers are a great way to save public education, and that they
Yes.
don't. But I also think that I would say the majority, that's just my intuition, fundamentally don't believe in public education.
Yeah.
It just more like going back to more like it's just not a value of theirs, and they know they can't say that out loud. But that's what their actions bear out to me.
Yeah.
To kind of land the plane, because we've talked about some big ideas. You guys are doing really important work. It seems like what you need now is just to connect with folks,
Yep.
to get out there and raise your profile and let people know about the work you're doing. Where can folks find you?
They can follow us on social media. We have every social media account that you could possibly imagine. ncbif.org is our website as well. You can sign up for our biweekly newsletter. You can contact me directly. You'll find my contact information on the website. I am interested in talking to as many subject matter experts and stakeholders as possible. So please reach out.
And he's on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, on
LinkedIn too,
Yeah.
yes.
And I would say for the newsletter,
You got to be for the business community,
That's
right?
right.
It's not just TikTok.
That's right.
It's really nice to have a North Carolina business, like an information source that like is data driven, not a lot of spin, no bullshit. It's just like this is the state of business and innovation in North Carolina, and it's it's all steak, no sizzle. So that is I will just pitch that to folks personally. And we have a little something for you. We have a shirt from our friends at TS Designs. I know you got some great threads today with your North Carolina shirt, but we've got another North Carolina shirt for you. I'm sporting it now for folks watching on.
That's right.
Yeah. Every guest who comes in gets a shirt from TS Designs, which is Alamance County's premier apparel company. Honestly, they are at the vanguard of the sustainable apparel industry and have been for a very long time.
And innovation.
And folks, we appreciate you tuning in to The Holler. If you haven't already, check out our Patreon and become a sustainer. Help us keep having these conversations, helping us build a better North Carolina one conversation at a time. And honestly, I feel like my IQ went up a couple points.
Well, and it connected a lot of dots for me personally.
Yeah.
So hopefully
these are not circles we run in.
No,
so
not
this was
at all,
really
not
really
too
cool.
much.
Anyway, Sam, thank you so much, and folks, thanks for
y'all.
listening.